This tutorial will show you how to make a mug by creating the basic shapes as curves and then developing surfaces to create the overall form. We'll start out with the control point curve. With the grid snap on, I'll tie in to the center axis, going straight out, holding down the shift key, and then further developing the shape, outside shape of the cup. Press enter when you're done, and if you want, you can adjust those points a little bit more to end up with the final shape. It might help to turn off the grid snap so that you can control this and make it a little bit more smooth. Once you have the outside profile, we're also going to create the inside. Instead of drawing it freehand, we'll use offset curve in the curve menu. We'll set it at a distance that makes a good wall thickness for the piece. And this might depend on how you've drawn your initial profile. We can adjust it by typing in a different number and then choosing on which side of the line you want it to create the new curve. For this, we're going to create it on the inside. That gives us a nice uniform thickness along, but you can see this bottom area might be problematic. For that, we can adjust the points, but we see then that the offset curve creates a curve that has far more points than the initial one. We can reduce this number by using the rebuild, selecting the curve, and changing the number of points. We want to find a balance between having enough points to follow the same basic shape, but having few enough that we can create a nice smooth shape. I'm going to adjust this slightly, preview the curve, and say OK. Now, for the most part, this is good, and you can see we have fewer points and they're arranged evenly along the line, but this point is problematic, so I can either adjust it or even delete it entirely, and we can see which one is a better option. I can always go back using undo and press escape to turn off the points. Before we create the surface from this, I'm also going to join the two, the inside profile and the outside profile, using the quick curve blend. Selecting the inside and the outside, it puts a line segment in. I'll then use the join tool to join these curves together to create one continuous curve. Press enter. To create the surface, we'll go to the surface menu and we'll be using the command revolve. The curve to revolve is this section of the cup. Press enter, and it's very important to make sure that you snap into the center. For that, I'm going to turn on the grid snap again and ensure that I draw an axis holding the shift key perfectly straight along the inside of the cup. Follow the prompts. The start angle can start at 0. I'll type in 0, enter. And you can do this manually by just moving the mouse, or you can also type in the revolution angle, 360 degrees, and press enter. Now we have the complete cup form, and in this case the surface has entirely closed itself by revolving 360 degrees. we can see the seam is highlighted a little bit darker, and that's where the beginning of the surface wraps around and then closes itself up by meeting the beginning point. Now we're going to create the shape of the handle. And for that I'm going to again use the control point curve. In the front view, I'll draw, laying down a few points, I'll draw the shape of the handle. And you can see I'm overlapping it with the surface that is already in place. Press enter, and we can adjust the points further so that we get a nice smooth result. Turn off the points. I can even scale this to make it the right size. Now we need some profiles in place. This is going to be the path that the handle follows, but I'm going to put in some oval or ellipse shapes to create the shape of the handle. Now, instead of just drawing an oval and trying to position it along that curve, I'm going to use the ellipse around curve option. So holding down, you can access ellipse around curve, select the curve, and then the center, which is going to start at the top of the curve. In the right view, I'll hold down Shift and draw out the end of the first axis and the end of the second axis. I'll repeat that command and draw a second profile in along the bottom of the curve. And this one's going to be more circular in shape. You can probably imagine what the outcome is going to look like. To create the surface from those curves, I'll use sweep one rail. The rail is the path, and the cross section, you can select the top and the bottom. And in this command you can use as many sections as you want. Make sure that the arrows align, that they're on the same side of the object. This is going to be where the seam is located, and the arrows should be facing the same direction. In this case they are, because it actually flips over onto itself. So we'll just press enter. And then if you're happy with the result, you can say OK. Now, these are still separate objects that are just happen to be overlapping, and the objective is for us to unify them so that we create a single enclosed volume. This is going to be what determines a solid object and what allows it to be understood and then produced using 3D printing or other manufacturing techniques. To do that, we're going to separate parts of these surfaces so that their edges will then meet and then can be joined together. And you can think about this as creating continuous surface that wraps the entire object completely. Now, in order for it to be continuous, that means that the handle edge needs to meet with the edge on the side of the outside of the cup. Then we'll go up over the lip and down into the center of the cup. Any of the surfaces that are overlapping or inside of this volume are extra and need to be deleted. They confuse the overall shape. First of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start cutting up parts of the surfaces and then deleting the ones that we no longer need. To do this, I'm going to use the split command, and I'll start splitting the handle. So the object to split is the handle. Press enter, and the cutting object in this case is going to be the cup. The result is that there's parts of the handle that are cut away and can be deleted. Now there are also extra parts in and along the bottom. So I'm deleting those extra surfaces and keeping the surfaces that meet the outside of the cup directly. These are still separate, even though they look like a single cup. To finish this, we now need to cut open the outside surface of the cup so that the handle edge can then meet and join completely. If you try to join these, even though they're touching, there's no edge along the cup for it to meet, so they can't be joined, even if you try. I'm going to repeat the split command, and in this case I'm now splitting the cup, and I'll press enter using the handle. And where the handle is touching the cup, it will split parts of that surface. I'm going to hide the handle so you can see what happened. This portion of the outside of the cup has been separated and can be deleted. This ends up opening the volume. Okay, so it's no longer a solid object like it was, but when we bring back the handle, its edges now meet up the edges along the cup perfectly. Now, these can be joined together, but we're going to work a little bit further in order to create a nice smooth transition between the two. To create this transition, we're going to cut away parts of both the handle and the cup, creating an opening and then creating a blended surface between them. For that, I'm going to use a command in the curve menu called offset curve on surface. And I'm going to select the edge along the outside of the cup. Okay, and you can see there's two edges there. One is for the handle and one is for the cup. Select the one pointing out towards the cup. And the offset distance, we'll just look in the, we're going to guess probably about 6 or 7 millimeters, depending on how you've drawn it. Before you type that value in, you can also look at where the offset is going to happen. In this case, the arrows are pointing in towards the center of the curve. I can click on flip so that they're extending out. Okay, so the arrows are going to offset towards the outside of the oval. And I'll type in the value at 7 and press enter. You can see the result is a curve positions itself 7 millimeters away from the initial curve, but it also wraps itself around the surface. That curve can now be used as a cutting object to split open the cup. I'm going to use the split command again, selecting the cup as the object to split, and the cutting object is the curve, and I'll press enter. Once again, we've removed a portion of the cup and opened it up. You can see that's an open surface. We're going to work a little bit further later to close it. To get a nice blended transition between the handle and the cup, I'm also going to cut back the handle. For that, I'm just going to use just a straight line, the polyline tool, and I'm going to move out a little bit and draw a cutting line that follows the edge of the cup somewhat. Similar to split, this time I'm going to use the command trim. The cutting object is the line, press enter, and I'll select the portion of the handle that I want to delete. If I select the wrong side, it ends up cutting away the part that I want. I can say undo, but I'll select this portion to remove it from the handle, then press enter. Now we have a nice smooth, we have a nice space between the two objects, and it should allow us to create a nice smooth blended surface between them. In the surface menu, I'll access blend surface and follow the prompts. Select the edge for the first segment, press enter, and then select the next. Again, the seams should correspond and should go in the same direction. If they don't, you can adjust them or flip them so that they align. Press enter. To see the result, we're going to turn on preview. You can adjust these or play with some of these further, just to see what the results are going to look like. I'm going to keep the original settings and say OK. We can render this to see how smooth a transition we've ended up with, and in this case that looks pretty good. At the bottom, I'm going to show you another technique in order to create this blend. At the top, we offset, creating a curve, and cut it open. At the bottom, I'm going to do something a little bit different. Where the two objects overlap, there's an edge positioned along there. Under the solid menu, I'm going to use the command pipe. And I'll select one of these edges, either the one for the handle or the one for the cup. And I'll draw a pipe radius. And I'm making it the right size so that the circle of the pipe can follow the curve. I'm going to keep it uniform, so I'll press enter. And the result is sort of a donut-shaped object that gets positioned. Now, we want to make sure that this resulting pipe doesn't come in on itself and create any kind of crease. And you can see this is a little bit close. It looks okay, but it might be a little bit close. So in this case, I would probably go back, try the command again, and make a slightly smaller radius. Press enter. Okay, and that one's much better. You can see that it's smooth. There's no little pinch that happens in the corner. If you liked this effect, if it's sort of a welded edge, you could start splitting these objects and lining up their edges and joining them back together to create the look that you wanted, getting rid of the interior surfaces. I'm going to start cutting the handle and the cup at the same time. I'll use split, and I'll select the pipe as the cutting object. Press enter. Now you can see what it's done is it's cut away portions of both the handle and the cup. To see that more clearly, I'm going to delete the pipe, which we really no longer need. And we can see that there is a segment of the handle that's been cut, which I'm going to delete. And there's a segment of the cup I'm also going to delete. The pipe cuts away a sufficient amount of material to then allow a nice blend to take place. Under the surface menu, I'll go back to the blend surface, selecting the segment for the first edge. Okay, check if auto chain is on and say yes. And for the most part, that's what you want it to do. You want it to automatically find the segments and to follow them as you select. First edge, I'll press enter, then select the second edge. Make sure the seams line up in the same direction. And then you have a nice blend between the two. And I'll just say okay. Finally, in order for this to be recognized as a solid object, we'll take these separate surfaces and join them together. And it's not until all of the surfaces are joined to the point where there are no openings, no open edges, that the object is now considered solid. We can check this quickly. Under the Analyze command, we'll go Edge Tools, Show Edges, select the object, press Enter, and we're looking for naked edges. So you can select naked edges, and you can see here at the top it says 10 edges total, no naked edges. That indicates a closed object that can be produced. Finally, I'll just turn on the render to see what that transition looks like. And in this case, the handle looks pretty good as it blends into the cup.